Alas, I'm in Paris again. Always recognizable by the smell of equal parts croissant, espresso, fraternité, liberté, égalité, and so much more. I've been frequently visiting this city since I was 18 years old, and let me tell you, it has always treated me very well. But where's the Eiffel Tower, you might ask? Or is this some kind of dangerous neighborhood on the outskirts of the city? Well, the difference between visiting Paris and how it's often portrayed in the media, certain TV shows, and even other YouTube videos can be as stark as night and day. So in this video, we're gonna talk about what it's actually like to visit Paris, France. And trust me, it's not just about bad neighborhoods and pickpockets or the Eiffel Tower and steak frites. Let's go take a little walk around the neighborhood, which is called Maisons-Alfort, by the way. I'll often stay at friends' houses over here, but this time I'm spending a night at basically a budget Accor hotel. It's kind of an apartment hotel. Adagio access. But in my opinion, by far the most notable thing about this hotel, besides the view at least, is this door. There's just a door for 2 rooms. Close that door. Close that door. You can only close the door in 1 room at once. So this is technically not a room. It's just a small, it's like purgatory, basically. This is purgatory in Paris. Luckily, you don't have to walk up these stairs. There is an elevator, but there's only 1 elevator on 7 floors. So walk down, take the elevator up, out to the street. So basically, Maisons-Alfort is one of many residential areas right along the périphérique, or the kind of circle road that surrounds the city of Paris. Basically, within that circle, you've got a little over 2 million people living. And then outside of the circle, where there's a lot more space to build places to live, many more millions of people live. The périphérique is actually just a little bit further that way, beyond where that bridge is that you see. And right here is a river. I believe it's called the Marne. It's a part of the Seine River, which, if you go way down where I'm pointing to that way, actually turns into 2 separate rivers. So this is the smaller one. And along the Marne here, you've got the neighborhood of Maisons-Alfort. But the reason I want to talk so much about this neighborhood is because the further you go towards the center of Paris, the higher the prices go. And a lot of the time, even when you end up paying a whole lot more money to stay way over there, somewhere very central in Paris, what you get doesn't really turn out to be, I don't know, that much worth it. Of course, it's very subjective. Maybe you're just paying for location, but just going a little bit outside to a neighborhood like Maisons-Alfort, or one of the dozens of others that are still along the metro or whatever other public transport, could be a really great way to actually afford visiting Paris. Or shoot, even if you've got like billions in your bank accounts or millions of Hilton points or whatever, it still might be a little bit more of a culturally interesting place to be. Now, one of the big things you'll see addressed in all kinds of videos about Paris, doesn't matter if they're on YouTube or anywhere else, is about how dangerous the city is. Now, I'm not about to pull out a bunch of crime stats here for you or something. It's definitely safer than plenty of North American cities and plenty of other European cities. There are certain neighborhoods that you don't really want to just go to without knowing where you're going at least, but a place like Maisons-Alfort, where I am right now, is definitely not one of those. The biggest issues that people visiting Paris have, well, let's be honest, they usually have to do with people going around pretty unaware of their surroundings. But really, the main things that you'll see included in all these different kinds of videos that talk about Paris being like the most dangerous place in the world and all that kind of stuff, besides if one of those swans would come over and bite my finger, which has happened to me before when I was a little kid, really just has to do with basically 2 things. One being the presence of pickpockets, which is kind of something you'll find in basically any European capital, some more than others. Paris definitely has a little bit of an issue of having a fair amount of people that at one point or another decided to dedicate their professional careers to pickpocketing people, mostly on the metro, but also sometimes near more popular tourist attractions, such as the Eiffel Tower. And the Eiffel Tower brings us to the second scheme, scam, or perhaps the best word is just inconvenience that you'll find here in Paris. At some major sites in Paris, especially the Eiffel Tower, there are often a lot of people that will be standing around playing a kind of rigged game where they can officially actually take your money for free, or going around with these kind of signature list things where they ask you to sign and then ask for something in return, or have some other kind of scheme up their sleeve or whatever. There is some of that in the metro and around major tourist attractions in Paris, but that really does not define the city at all. It's almost for sure, if you're visiting Paris for the first time, you're going to want to see some of those main world famous attractions. This is one of the most visited cities in the world, and places like the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, the Arch of Triumph, or one of the city's many other notable sites are like 100% definitely worth witnessing, worth visiting at least once. But historical and beautiful sites like that are really just one part of the multifaceted Parisian culture. So when it comes to people talking about Paris being an overly dangerous or scam-ridden city, take all of that with a grain of salt. It's a place that you definitely want to be aware of your surroundings like any major city, and it's a busy place where people are often in a rush and might not feel all that friendly at first. I've visited here over a dozen times now, sometimes for longer periods, sometimes for shorter like this trip, and I've just never had any issues at all. It's also worth keeping in mind that although the center of the city only has a little over 2 million inhabitants, it's still a really big city, and it's got that fast-paced vibe where people are usually pretty busy. You know, think your London, New York, Tokyo. It's kind of similar to that in Paris, except when it's time to take a break for lunch, then you'll probably find that it's very similar to the rest of France. And talking about lunch, well, or at least talking about eating, when you're in France, you're in a place where people enjoy eating and there's gonna be some kind of good food. Paris is no exception. In fact, in my experience, rather than being a place where you just find traditional French dishes or something like that, it's a place where you can find food from almost anywhere in the world. When you get into central areas, there are a lot of these kind of more tourist geared, or basically you could just call them tourist restaurants, that will have inflated prices and usually don't really have the best quality anyway. But if you do a little bit of research, there are dozens, probably hundreds of high quality restaurants throughout Paris, whether you're in a more central area or in a place like Maisons-Alfort. What I'd say is probably the biggest key to making your dining part of visiting Paris a nice experience is doing as the French do, basically, or doing as the Parisians do, I should say. In the morning, you start your day with a croissant or pain au chocolat and some kind of espresso-based drink usually. The amount of really good bakeries you'll find just about anywhere in the city, in my view, is absolutely insane. Per capita, it might be like the most in the world. And then when it comes to lunch, you often have these fixed lunch specials, which can actually be a pretty solid deal. And dining in a restaurant in France is always a pretty nice experience, if you go to the right restaurant, of course. But dinner can often be quite a bit more expensive than lunch, and the quality of the food, even at a grocery store here in France, is just really high, maybe higher than just about anywhere else in the world. Paris also has a ton of neighborhood markets, which are usually limited to like 1, 2, maybe 3 days a week, so it's worth looking up wherever you'll be staying. For example, here in Maisons-Alfort, there's a market that they have on the weekends, and you'll find really high quality, locally sourced foods available there that you won't even be able to find at the grocery store. And since you're not in the center of the city, the prices in a place like this are usually a little bit lower. But other than that, I would reiterate, wherever you end up actually staying in Paris, it is important to consider your transport options. And there are just a few more general transport details here that are worth knowing about. Unless you're driving through here, which is a completely different story, then you're probably arriving at one of the city's 2 airports, Orly or Charles de Gaulle being up in the north and then Orly to the south, or one of a number of different long-distance train stations. For example, last night I arrived to Paris Est. Sometimes you get to Paris early, sometimes you get to Paris late. I think basically it has that name because Est translates to east, and all of the trains coming from the east to Paris basically go there. That is, unless you're taking a train from Lyon and then you end up at Gare de Lyon. There's a handful of different stations, so if you are taking a high-speed train here, it's really important to know which station you're arriving to and look up what the transport options from that station to your final destination are before you actually get there. But when it does come to your transport options, know that sometimes, especially if you're arriving to one of the 2 airports, it can actually be a little bit cheaper, especially if you're traveling in a group, to take a taxi, Uber, Bolt, or one of those options rather than public transport. Between the buses that you see here, the metro that you see there, and the faster RER trains, Paris has a really great public transport system. And for me, taking it is kind of a quintessential part of visiting Paris in general. It's just worth looking up prices, just in case it does happen to be cheaper, to get a private ride with a few of your friends rather than take a public transport ride that could actually take longer. It just depends a lot on the route too. When you do need to pay for your public transport ticket though, there's a pretty new app that's quite convenient here. You can see I've already bought a ticket in here, but basically you can just buy tickets in your app and then you tap on board the bus, on the metro, or on the RER, and it's as easy as that. And speaking of grocery stores, all that talking got me pretty thirsty. So, I mean, as it goes for Paris, you could call it overrated, you could call it underrated, but really, it's just Paris. It probably doesn't care that much about what you think about it, but I'd definitely take the basic precautions you take in any other big city, but don't come here thinking Paris is dangerous, full of scams, any of that kind of stuff. And vice versa, don't come here thinking Paris is only the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre. But then again, that's just based on my experience here in Paris. Yours could be totally different, and if it is, definitely drop a comment down below about it. This time I'm just here for a few days though, as I get ready to take my first flight in a series of about 15, maybe 16 flights all the way around the world. So if you're not already subscribed, make sure to do so now because I'll be posting a ton of videos from this trip. Otherwise, don't forget to give this video a like. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.